Good evening, everyone. As we all know that the people who have joined us today, they probably know that I'm Fatima Gilani, co-founder and senior vice chairperson of Read Pakistan. And today I have with me a very special person, Dr. Ryan Brasher. I'm going to introduce him to you because the people who already were engaged in this activity before this knew it, and they have been discussing it with me that this is an amazing thing that we are doing, and we would really, really like to be a part of today's session. The amazing part is that we are going to have a lot of questions today. The topic is really intriguing because it is about bedtime stories. And we're going to talk about everything that's going to come our way informally with Dr. Ryan Brasher. Let me introduce you to him a bit so that everybody who is engaged with us today knows what we are talking about. So Dr. Ryan is a very, very special person. He has done his PhD from Indiana University in political science with subfields in comparative politics and international relations and minor in Central Eurasian Studies. This is very, very interesting. And the best part about him is that all of this and so much more I'm going to share with you. And you will still be knowing that after having so much studies, he is still the person who contacted us. When we contacted him, he reported back to us in just about a few minutes, and he was the one who actually agreed that he would come to the session. I'm really, we not pursuing him, rather he being a part of such a social mobilization and social activity that we keep on doing every now and then. Let me also introduce him as the member of Social Science History Association, International Political Science Association, and American Political Science Association. Well, on top of this is the most important thing is that he has done a lot of research. Research is like really important nowadays. State building in early 20th century of Afghanistan and Iran. This might just sound a bit political, but I think it's much more than that, because it's also related with nationalism and ethnic identity in Central Asia, Christian minority in Pakistan, past contributions, and current attitudes, which is amazing, like really, ethno-federalism in Pakistan. So now here we come and talk about Pakistan in general, but we will be talking a lot more than this. So the courses that he's teaching right now, let me share those as well. Introduction to Political Sciences, Government of Western Europe and North America, Research Methodology, my favorite. The Politics of the Middle East, Theories of Comparative Politics, and the Foreign Policy Analysis, which is again a very intriguing, very interesting topic. And now at Indiana University, he is teaching Democracy and National Security, which is something of interest for the whole world right now. Introduction to Comparative Politics, Politics of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. And now let me tell you that all of this being a political scenario, or maybe you can just associate with him a bit more to another facet and another level. He has a lot to do with publications. In 2011, Ethnic Border or Artificial Namesake, the construction of Tajik identity in Afghanistan and Tajikistan. So this is amazing, all related with sociology. In 2014, he co-authored Militant Islam in South Asia. 2019 and 20, he accepted for publication or UP Pakistan. And the most amazing part is that all of this has got something or the other to do with Pakistan. So a lot of students related with research might just be interested in reading his studies, which is another a very unique face of a lot of things. He has actually worked with events and conferences, and he has been attending all those. In July 2016, for instance, International Political Science Association conference, he has done that in Poland, attended it. And in April 2017, he was here in Lahore. So he was, he was attending this conference as well. By saying that he was here in Lahore does not mean that I'm in Lahore. I am in Quetta right now, by the way. and he was here in Pakistan. That's what I meant to say. Then, a lot of research papers he has also been writing. And in the meanwhile, we've really selected a very nice, simple topic for Dr. Ryan. First of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Ryan, for joining us today for this social cause. I am really, really happy that you're here with us today. How are you?
Good, good. How are you? Thank you for inviting me.
I'm perfect. That's great. Thank you so very much. Dr. Ryan, first of all, from Read Pakistan and from my side as the co-founder of Read Pakistan, this is an amazing opportunity to have been connected with so much a talented person and so much a knowledgeable person like yourself. And touch with you. And so thanks for that. Just sharing if you saw, Aisha Khan is here with us and she's saying hi sir, and Prince Ali Rehan is saying hello, how are you? So we've got live people coming in as well through StreamYard, so maybe a lot of questions might be just coming in. So for starting up the whole thing, let's just hear it from you. What do you think about bedtime stories? I selected this topic, it's a very simple one, but you tell me, what do you think about bedtime stories?
I think they're very important. And I think perhaps the most important qualifications that you didn't mention in regard to bedtime stories, and which, because I didn't mention them to you, I have 4 children, and from ages 4 through 12. And
Wow.
we've been living in Lahore, Pakistan since February 2014. And so my children have gone to school here in Lahore all their lives. And I think bedtime stories are important for a whole number of reasons. Some of it has to do with the educational development of children. Some of it has to do with the sanity of parents in the evenings. Where to begin? I think, and I'll mention some details in a minute, but I think bedtime stories provide an excellent segue, an excellent way to transition your children from being active to going to bed. I know sometimes this can be a challenge with kids that don't want to go to bed, but bedtime story as a routine, as a ritual, is something that signals to the children, okay, now it's time to calm down, now it's time to simmer down, now it's time to get ready for bed. So in that sense, it's key for parents, not just for children. But it also instills in children a love for reading, because as a child, I remember my father reading with us, and he liked to read different kinds of stories with us, and we would love that time where we'd sit. And it's one more thing that we were allowed to do before we had to go to bed. So I have very positive memories associated with bedtime story. And I think it's also good to keep the bond between parent and child, but also to instill in children the habit of reading, because maybe I can share a little bit more about that later on. Even before children learn how to read, they are instilled the love of reading by sitting with their parent who is reading to them. And with my own children, I've noticed even after they themselves can read, they still want me to read with them. So it is something that has all kinds of benefits all the way around.
That's so wonderful, Dr. Ryan, because I think that's perfect how you've explained bedtime stories. I'll pick up the point where you've just said that you can really connect with the child. This is amazing, because once we're connected with children, there are 100 other ways, but I think the best way to connect with them is through knowledge sharing. And I think that's the best way also to give to them, and also to contact with them, to have the maximum level of interaction. And with that, coupled up comes in the knowledge vestas, and that needs to be explored more. One of my conferences in which I was giving a bit of, I would rather say, it was just a thought sharing process through the seminars. And I remember, Dr. Ryan, that there were people who were asking, when do you start reading, at what age? And I actually told them that even before the age of 0, which is when the child is in the womb of the mother, father. That is where you start learning that it is important to have a connection through reading. And I did a bit of that with my own son. And well, you have explained that you have 4 children. Now, the basic question comes in, Dr. Ryan. The sanity, yes, it follows, but I think the sanity of the parents as well. But what do you think? I mean, for 4 till 12, this is the age bracket which is most affected when you are reading to them or they're reading to, by themselves. So what do you think? What kind of books would you suggest for the age group from 4 to 12? Because that's the most effective part of learning as far as the brain as a sponge is concluded. So what do you think about that? What kind of books should be given to children?
Well, I like that you asked this question because I have a small little stack of books right here. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
might just show them real quickly to you. So,
Yes.
in terms of children who don't know how to read yet, very young, I found this book really nicely. It's a bit weathered, I'm sorry, because we've
I,
read it so much, but it's sort of instilling the love of art in them. So it's very simple text. Oops, I got it the wrong way. Very simple text. This is on Monet. It has a bunch of paintings by Monet, and then it has text along with it.
wow.
And so I love doing that because it has a little rhyme with it as well, and it's nice pictures and sort of calms the children down
Wow.
at night.
Lovely.
So these
Color.
so they're actual copies of Monet's actual paintings. Then I have here another book. We've read it so much that the cover has come off. You can see here, but this is by Jan Brett. I like her stories because they're very unique. But in this case, there is this. They're usually set in a particular cultural setting, somewhere in Latin America. One is in this particular one. I think is supposed to be in Russia, if I'm not mistaken. It's about this little girl who who hangs up her clothes, and then all of the animals start taking the clothes and wearing them as hats, and then the animals are going around and making fun of each other. Why are they wearing hats? But in the end, they're all wearing hats. It's a nice little story that I like to read with my kids. So it's slightly older age than this book, but because it has a bit more text. But it's sort of a nice little progression. In the end, the girl gets or at least tries to get all the clothes back that have been blowing off the clothesline. Now, you might have seen this book. This is a classic, Good Night Moon. This is perfect.
Margaret.
The Margaret Wise. This is perfect for good night. So it doesn't follow a logical progression, but by the end of the book, you get this warm, fuzzy feeling that now you're ready to go to bed. And my kids have liked it, even though when you're reading it as a parent, you're thinking, well, what's the message here? It doesn't really have much of a message. It's just a kind of a book that helps instill the routine of bedtime. So it starts out with this bunny who's going to bed in this room, and he describes all the different things that are in the room, including a picture of the cow jumping over the moon. And then by the end of the story, the light is turned off, his mom has gone to bed, and he is falling asleep. So it's a very nice book to read to little kids, particularly before the age of going to school, sort of 4 or 5, that age. You might want to stop me while you can, but I've got one poem I wanted to read. I like to read poetry, and it sort of instills in the kids a sense of rhythm and rhyme, and sometimes they can be quite fun. But there's this one story, a poem that's called, can you see it? Escape at Bedtime. It's about a child who is running away from his parents. He doesn't want to go to bed, and his parents chase after him. And then he goes to bed, but it was all worth it because he saw the stars in the sky. So if you allow me, can I read it real quick?
Yes, please do that because I think that would be great.
Okay, so here is it's titled "The Escape at Bedtime." The lights from the
Okay.
parlor and kitchen shone out through the blinds and the windows and bars. And high overhead and all moving about, there are thousands of millions of stars. There never were such thousands of leaves on a tree, nor of people in church or the park, as the crowds of the stars that looked down upon me and that glittered and winked in the dark. The dog and the plow, and the hunter and all, and the star of the sailor and Mars, these shone in the sky, and the pail by the wall would be half full of water and stars. They saw me at last, and they chased me with cries, and they soon had me packed into bed. But the glory kept shining and bright in my eyes, and the stars going round in my head. So it's a nice
Oh,
story. It's by These are poems by Robert Louis Stevenson, who's I think famous for Treasure Island, but he also wrote these poems. Um, for slightly older kids, there is Eric Carle. You might have heard of him. He's got
yes,
an
Eric.
amazing set of books that involve animals, oftentimes insects. This one's about the very busy spider who is busy doing something. All the animals are trying to interrupt the spider and get her to do something with them. So here's the horse who's asking, uh, there's the horse, asking the spider whether the spider wants to go for a ride or not. And the spider doesn't say anything and just keeps on building the web. And by the end, the spider has built this huge web without sort of it becoming apparent that's what he's been doing or she been doing, and then she catches the fly and sort of symbol. Of course, the underlying message is you should work hard and not just fool around all day. But
Yeah.
it's also a nice little calm story to get people to get your kids to calm down and be ready for bed. Now,
That's
um,
yeah.
if I
Yeah.
can go now, when the kids are reaching a slightly older age, they might be up for there are these classics that have been abridged and illustrated for children. So one of my favorites is Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two
Oh yeah.
Cities,
Oh,
which
all-time favorite for I think most of the people who have been through literature. So, A Tale of Two Cities. This is probably a simpler compendium. Yes, of course.
yes, it's very short and has some very
Yeah.
nice pictures in it, but essentially it's a
Yeah.
tale of self-sacrifice for the sake of others, so that they can love. And in the end, the protagonist sacrifices himself during the French Revolution. But it's very nice because there's very nice
Yes.
illustrations, and presumably once kids go to high school or university and they're confronted with a real novel, they're like, well, I read something like this as a child, and so they'll be more interested in it. I know when I was a child and I was confronted, or when I was in school and I was confronted with high literature in my classes, my initial reaction was a bit negative, like I have to read this, is not very interesting. But I think having some of these illustrated classics um,
Mhm.
instills them in them a love of reading and also a familiarity with. We have a variety of these with Shakespeare and other. I mean, and they're widely available. Available. I've seen them all over Lahore, so it's not that difficult. Um,
Yes, I think, and for people who are here with us today, I think this is a very good message as well. Other than this, that there are books, by the way, people available for people who know this much might just not be new information, but for people who really want to get into English language, there were a few students, Dr. Ryan, who I was at some point in time I was giving lectures at different universities, and they used to ask how they should be able to generate this income in as a habit. And I used to tell them all the time that, you know what, you can go for easy English first and then start moving towards more difficult words in English, or maybe to a different level of English that you can reach out to. So initially I told them that there were books available for about 400 vocabulary words and 500 vocabulary words and so on. And so basically, those were the easier versions. And if you get those, these are the ones which are narrated for children. And then once you read those, then you will develop interest for different more difficult books. Like yourself, you just told about The Tale of Two Cities. For initially, when I reached to my master's level and I had to read The Tale of Two Cities, I had to go through the novel twice, just to make sure that I was completely in contact with the writer, and I was in semblance with the actual idea. I didn't want to go astray here or there. By the way, just let me just, Dr. Ryan, there are people who want to appreciate you, because I keep on looking at the screen because there are constant comments coming in. So Mohammed Israr is saying that nice meeting you both. Okay, Israr, thank you very much. He says that this session is going amazing. I think it's majorly because of you, Dr. Ryan. And then another person is here saying great session. Tatir Taj is giving showing us a face with the hearts in her eyes. So I think, Tatir, you're trying to say that you like us or something. Okay, thank you. Then we have Dr. Adil Irfan Rao. He's saying Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidah Fatima Gilani. Hello. Walaikum assalam, Dr. Adil. And greetings to Dr. Ryan as well. So this is Dr. Adil, HOD School of Peace and Counter-Terrorism Studies in Minhaj University, Lahore. Okay, Adil, thank you very much, Dr. Adil. Amazing person, and I heard lots about you, Dr. Ryan. In fact, we had a short meeting in FC College in Political Science Department before, when I left for South Korea to pursue my PhD back in 2013 and 14, I guess. So this is Dr. Adil. I think, Dr. Adil, you have you're just saying that you're there in Lahore, and if you get a chance, Dr. Ryan can get in touch with you through me. You both doctors with each other, and I think that would be great if this is going to build any intellectual ties. I think Read Pakistan is all about intellectual ties. He says, good to see you here on Read Pakistan. I'll definitely want to see you soon. Is that a yes, Dr. Ryan?
क्यों नहीं?
Oh,
Yes,
oh,
definitely.
there you go, Adil. I think that's quite a bright yes with the Q nahi. Oh, I say that word all the time to my son. Q nahi, you can do this. Q nahi, you can do that. Okay, so moving back to the topic. Thank you very much, Dr. Adil. Dr. Ryan, for bedtime stories, do you think that they leave a deeper impact on the mind of a child, or even for a senior person, when you're going to bed? Or do you think that reading a book in the daytime is more effective? Let's weigh it in a way that people are able to have it in their minds, that weighing both things. See, reading is good anyways, but I'm just trying to put it in a way, in a different way, that is reading at the daytime more effective for the brain intelligence and brain intellect, or do you think that reading at night leaves a more deeper impact? What do you think?
That's a difficult question, and probably above my pay grade, uh, as I'm not an educational specialist. But I would say, if I'm telling my students to study and to read for the test, I would say, if you do it at night, you're going to be sleepy, and so you may not remember as much about it in terms of facts and concepts and these kinds of things. But I think your question sort of carried the answer with it as well. I think at bedtime, it's not just about learning. It's not just about having facts enter your brain. It's about a ritual. It's about a feeling. It's about a sense of togetherness. And so I think the unique thing about bedtime stories is that you remember, as a child, I may not remember the times where I sat and read something, but when I look back, I can definitely remember the times when I sat with my parents together, the feeling of it, to be together. So it's maybe not the best studying strategy, but definitely I think for creating bonds in the family, and also helping students learn. I was going to say, make another comment, that I don't think these stories. Now, most of these stories that I have here are in English, but I don't think I think the benefit may be just as great or even greater in Urdu or even Punjabi if you can find books. I know here in Lahore there's plenty of children's books in Urdu. Um, we have a few of those here as well, and sometimes I'm a bit concerned that in Lahore there's so much emphasis on English. It's good, uh, but when children are not learning or reading books in their own native language, that is also not a good thing. I think, especially at bedtime, one should not be shy in having and reading Urdu stories as well. When we have our MPhil admissions process, one of the questions I always ask is, what are your reading habits? And invariably, here they're a bit weak, we can say. But then people are a bit shy sometimes. And I ask them, look, anything. It doesn't have to be academic. What do you read novels? Do you read them in Urdu? Do you read them in English? And even if they read in Urdu, then it tells me something about their reading habits. So reading shouldn't just be, of course, restricted to English. There's a lot of benefit in reading in your own native language, I think, especially when
That's so true. That's so true, Dr. Ryan, because I'm myself MPhil in linguistics, English linguistics, but I felt that when I was going through the learning passage of, so the best thing that I learned from MPhil linguistics was that the language is important, and it doesn't matter if the lingua franca is this language or that. Obviously, it is English, but at the same time, English can be used as a tool to get more information and do the research in the correct manner. But I think the other regional languages like Pashto, Sindhi, or even for that matter, our national language like Urdu itself, I mean, they have their own benefits, they have their own stats, and I think that they're as important as English itself. But definitely, when we talk of English, we will find more material because it's supported by the publishers, it's supported by the publications, and so we'll find more material, do more research. It would be it would be great just to have the language as a complementary tool to supplement our knowledge. By the way, we have two more comments. I would like to share those with you. And this one says Ghulam Abbas is saying, uh, "Dear, you're a great daughter." Ghulam Abbas, I'm sorry, can you be kind enough if this is a daughter or maybe somebody who's returning back to society, or maybe it's a social on that. B Naz is saying Assalamu alaikum and paying regards to Dr. Ryan. Then well, here is Dr. Adil Irfan again saying, with Dr. Ryan due permission, Fatima, please provide me his contact number. This is completely your call, Dr. Ryan. So I will share it in the personal email address if you require it. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine. So okay, now my third question. And yes, very nicely put up, Dr. Ryan, that things are more emotional at night, as in I would rather put it that way, that with children it is more of an emotional contact with your children, like you said yourself. And I think for building up relationship with your family, this is the best time. For learning stuff, there is there, so there are two. You very nicely answered it, even though you said that you're underpaid for the question, but I think you've still dealt with it in a great manner. So pretty impressive. Now, another thing that I had in mind and I wanted to ask you was that, Dr. Ryan, because the topic all revolves around bedtime stories, the psychology says that whatever information that we gather, and so information, or maybe you can say the emotion, the connectivity, it goes back in your mind, and which is instilled, of course, in the amygdala, which has the memory and everything, maybe, if I'm very much correct. And you, on the contrary, as a person, I'm saying, not like as in you and I, but as a person, because you're connected with that memory and everything, it has an impact on the dreams and on the further day coming your way. So you think if reading is inculcated as a part and parcel of night studying, as in bedtime stories, do you think that the dreams are connected and the coming day is connected because our mind is leaving impact for the coming times? So do you think that as a person, have you personally experienced it?
Having dreams connected with what I read before.
Yeah, and then the day. So basically, what people say is that if you're reading material which is optimistic, the next day that's going to come your way is going to be very optimistic and very positive. And if you and obviously the dreams connected with it as well. So have you have you experienced it as a person yourself, or
Um,
you think no, it has got nothing to do with reality?
it could. I can't think of an example from myself. I know when I was young, I used to pray and ask God that He would give me an interesting dream, like a movie, so I would be
Oh,
entertained at night. But I don't know if that was ever answered. It wasn't a very, can we say, profound request. But it could very well be. Dreams are very interesting. You may be a bit more up to date on sort of the academic discussion of dreams, but I know that here in Pakistan, dreams have another set of significance that maybe in America sometimes people don't give them. And Americans tend to dismiss dreams very quickly, I think, whereas in my discussions here, dreams oftentimes tend to take on more significance and why one had them. Now, how they're connected with bedtime stories, it would be an interesting study. I suppose we could create two groups, a test group and a control group, and to one we would read one set of stories and to one another, and then we'll ask them in the morning what kind of dreams they had. But
I think you should take it up as an activity.
I think it's a very interesting proposition.
Yeah, well, as a child, I was very much interested in dreams, and frankly speaking, I still do think that there is a major part being played of our dreams in our lives because then they leave us with imprints for the next coming day, and the positivity and the negativity it all comes and becomes part of the main silhouette of life that we have. We have Sabine Naz saying that bedtime stories is a very interesting topic. Thank you, Sabine. It is the dire requirement of this time. Yes, of course it is, because this is where we want that people should, even if they're not reading bedtime stories, they should at least start reading. And then we have Saida Numera Mohsin, and she is saying, which is a very interesting comment. She says that we live with our dreams. My God, Numera, this can be taken up as two different meanings, because one of the meanings might just say that we're living with our dreams, means that we are following our dreams, and second is that yeah, we're living with our dreams. It's either negative or positive. My next upcoming question, Dr. Ryan, for you is that how much do you think role, as in put it into percentage, is being played nowadays in our community, in our society? Because mashallah, you have been here in Pakistan since quite some time, and you have a very nice comparative analysis of how Pakistan has been. You see readers around you, you see Pakistani people, giving out towards reading. Do you think that Pakistan, and I would say that other countries as well, you've been to a couple of countries as well, so can you draw a comparative analysis that for bedtime stories, do you think which country, or rather I should put it, underdeveloped countries or developing countries or developed countries, can these three be put in a line? And if we can see which country is going to, or which countries are going to get more benefit from bedtime stories, are they going to be the underdeveloped countries? Are they the developed nations? Are they the ones who are just playing their role?
I would think that everyone can. Now, we can see
How?
this division. I think this division that you just talked about, we can see this in Lahore itself. We have in Lahore a society that is highly hierarchically organized in terms of an elite class, a middle class, and a lower class, and even more divisions among them. Now, the sad thing is that poor folks oftentimes have, number one, less time. The parents may be working much longer hours and they don't have the time to spend with their children to read. They may not have the education to do so. They may not be able to read. We know lots of people here in Lahore whose parents are not literate. And now, of course, that is compensated sometimes by telling stories, bedtime stories, as opposed to reading from a book. So you do have the oral tradition as well. On the other hand, as you move up this socioeconomic ladder, it's not like the situation is ideal there as well. As the wealthier people get, the more access the children will have to mobile phones or video games and other kinds of distractions, where the parent will simply sort of we've seen this many times where a child will cry and the parent will just give a phone into their hand to sort of pacify.
Yes.
And I don't think this develops very good habits. It's simply developing the addiction to the phone. So I think the challenge is there for everyone to draw the benefits from bedtime stories. And so I don't think in the same way, developed sort of midway and developing countries, they all have their own challenges in terms of things that might keep people from reading bedtime stories or telling bedtime stories to their children. So they all have these hindrances that they have to overcome. But I think the benefits are all there for everyone in terms of intellectual development, in terms of developing family bonds, and in terms of the moral development of children as well. I think we talk a lot about intellectual development, but I would rather have an undereducated child who is a moral person as opposed to an overeducated child that learns how to rip everyone off. If I may, there is one book I'm a huge fan as a child of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I read it so many times in a row as a fifth or sixth grader that my mother took the books away from me so that I would start reading something else. I think she was afraid that I was going to turn into a hobbit and live in a hole. But Lord of the Rings here, that is especially good for somewhat older children, maybe 9, 10, and above. Now, I read it. My father read The Hobbit to me, and then I read Lord of the Rings by myself. But my children themselves, they love reading it with me. And so I've read it with my oldest son. We're actually listening to an audio book of it right now with my all the sons together. And I like The Lord of the Rings because it combines adventure, the sense of adventure. And I think children love adventure, that these hobbits are torn away from their nice, comfortable existence and have to go out into the world and experience this rather frightening but also amazing adventure. But it also, you have the value of home and connection to one's home and locality. And the hobbits in The Lord of the Rings, they're very much bound to the earth that they come from. And even though they go on an adventure, they want to come back and be connected with it and their community. So those are good values. The books also instill a very clear sense of good versus the evil. There are, now of course, we could say that nowadays there is a sense that we do need to understand other people's perspectives. We shouldn't make enemies into other people. And I think that's very important. We should put ourselves in other people's shoes. But Lord of the Rings is very nice because it does indicate, look, there is good and evil in this world. And just like Frodo or like Gollum, we can choose sort of a moral path, or we can choose an immoral path. And those choices have long-term consequences. And Gollum is the way he is because of a whole series of choices that he made over the long term, and he ends up as a very sort of sorry, mischievous character. Yeah. And so I like books also because of the moral development that they give. Now, for us as a family and as followers of Hazrat Isa al-Masih alayhi salam, we put a lot of emphasis on reading the Tawrat and the Injil, the Holy Bible. And
Yeah.
there are some kids' versions as well, where you have these stories that are in the Bible, and I think many of these stories are also paralleled in the Holy Quran. But there's some children's Bibles that sort of pictorially depict um, the message of the Bible, and I think for children in particular, it's the stories that speak to them. Doctrinal issues as a child, it's neither here nor there, but it's the stories that stick in your brain, and so we've put a lot of emphasis on reading these stories to them, so that they're from childhood and they realize that God loves them and has a plan for their life, and wants them to walk in the right path. And so one of my favorite stories that I have is the story of Hazrat Isa al-Masih and the time he is spending with children, that he loves children. And so I think this is also something that speaks to them, and particularly at nighttime when you have I know some children struggle with fears and monsters under the bed and these kinds of things. And so reading
I
these
know
kinds of stories, I think, would be a good
that's
thing.
amazing. That's the perfect thing. I remember my grandfather, even though he left us very very soon, but I remember him, and I remember him reading these stories, the religious ones, and we all share more or less the same religious stories, because my father did a course in Bible, and so I got the opportunity to read from the scriptures. And then I of course, myself being a Muslim, I was going through a lot of stories that were a part of Quran. So when I compared them, more or less, they were usually the same. So these are the stories which are developing the ethical or the moral aspect of your personality, which actually means that at the end of the day, you need to be a better person in actual, rather than being an intellectual who would rather give back to the society much lesser than a person who was morally or ethically much effective. We also have Numera saying that, yes, a very important point, listening to you and loving your personality, Dr. Ryan. And then Wrote is the same. Well, Numera, I can't read the last text. Please share it again with us. But she's appreciating this aspect, and she's saying that she's loving your personality, Dr. Ryan. And yes, so ethically and morally, we need to be on a very sound track. So definitely this will be inculcated in our personalities once we listen to all the religious, and it doesn't really matter to which religion, because none of the religions teach us bad things. And I don't think there's at least even one religion in the whole world which says that, oh yeah, lying is good, or please don't listen to your elders, or don't please hurt people, because that's great, you keep it up, and stuff like that. So I think more or less all the religions, and of course Christianity being the sister religion to Islam, it's again very ethical and morally very very sound. So yes, this is definitely one of the major issues that our society is facing. Well, tell me, Dr. Ryan, you were writing so much about social implications, you were writing about society, you were writing about politics, you were keeping in mind Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. Are these nightmares to you at night? Because you must be studying one book or the other, even for bedtime stories. One of the books must just be there for political output. What do you think? Were you having nightmares?
Well, let's just say, my wife and I like to watch a little show before we go to bed, so we have our own bedtime story as well. But usually, I know that she would prefer not to watch a show that's too political, or how can we say, something that would depict a conflict or something that's too close to home. Let's put it that way. For myself, Pakistan, of course, for a political scientist, Pakistan is a wonderful country because there's so many different things happening. If whatever you want to study, you can study it here. If you want to study ethnic identity and how it relates to politics. The Pakistan's a great case study. Sadly, of course, in terms of the experience of ordinary Pakistanis, but if one wanted to study terrorism, obviously Pakistan has had some experience with that. If one wanted to study if one wanted to study enduring rivalries, well, India-Pakistan relationship is an enduring rival. So there's all kinds of things that one can study in the context of Pakistan. So as a political scientist, I find it interesting. Of course, living here and having a family, sometimes I wish things would be less turbulent. As a political scientist, of course, it's interesting to study. But I think the situation in Pakistan has improved considerably compared to when I first arrived. So it is certainly nowhere near what maybe the image of Pakistan is in the West or outside of Pakistan. Living in Pakistan is one sees the reality, and that is actually a very nice place to be.
Oh, thank you very much. You were in Minhaj University in 2018 and chaired a conference on social responsibility and world religions. That's actually an amazing thing because social responsibility and world religions, I mean, these are two things which people don't really tend to get into like really directly, but you were chairing the whole, I would rather say that do you think that a social responsibility is also there when it comes to reading? I'm going to get Read Pakistan into this thing, so I'm sorry, but you'll have to
Good.
answer this one.
No, that's good. Yeah, just uh, um, to refer back to Minhaj University.
Yeah,
They've been very kind in inviting me there 2 times. I just chaired a small little session. I was in no means chairing the whole thing. But
okay.
yes, definitely, as I was mentioning, reading, reading bedtime stories, as I mentioned, you're fulfilling your own responsibility to your children, and particularly my wife, if she's had a very long day, she doesn't want to deal with the kids at, at the end of it. And so she's saying, now you take care of them. So what is one of the best ways to do so is to read them bedtime
To them.
stories. Right. So in that sense, I'm fulfilling my individual social responsibility. But as I mentioned, uh, by looking at the carefully examining the books that one picks, obviously one is instilling also values in children that hopefully they will take with them. And I think we mentioned earlier, bedtime stories may not be the best time to study for an exam, but one does remember the experience of it, and hopefully also the kind of moral principles that are instilled during bedtime stories.
Yeah, we have a doctor, we had Sayyida Numara Mohsin. She says, why are stories such a powerful part of any bedtime ritual? This is an interesting question. Maybe it leaves greater impact, maybe. But the question is for you, Dr. Ryan. So she says, why are stories such a powerful part of any bedtime ritual? So why stories? Why not some other narration, some anything else, but like quotations or maybe anything which is more boring, which can put you to sleep more
Well,
easily.
there you have your answer. There, it's boring for the children. It's not something they look forward to. But a bedtime story, that is something that they look forward to. So my 4-year-old daughter, sometimes she doesn't want to go to bed. So of course, I can just pull up the danda and say it's time to go to bed. But to make it a positive experience, not a negative experience, one associates bedtime with good things. And so, if she doesn't want to go to bed, then you say, "Well, I'm going to read you a bedtime. I'm going to read you a story." Then oftentimes she does want to go to bed because it's a positive thing. And so, in that sense, it is something to look forward to at the most sort of superficial level. But there's also something about stories that one can immerse oneself in. I know my wife says her father would oftentimes just tell them a story at bedtime, and it would be about their day, and so they would become the main character in the story. I haven't done this, but sometimes my wife does this, and of course that draws in the children as well, and then they can also reflect on their day and how it went. and it helps them to process as well, and
Yeah.
in a particular kind of way. And with children, you know, it's not like a counseling session where they're sitting on the couch and you ask them, "How was your day?" It depends on your child. Well, you know, my oldest child, he will not share these things very easily, right? Whereas another child will just sort of blurt out whatever happened. And so just asking straight up questions, you might not get very good answers. But if you have this more of a story kind of approach, I think that's also an effective way to communicate with one's children. One could ask, you know, what do you think about the story? You know, what did you like about it? Does
That's
it
true.
connect with any of your experience today at school or at home or with your friends or with your siblings? These kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that that's a very good tool. I think that's it's going to be very effective for people who have children who are not very interactive, or for people even somebody who is of an introvert nature. And there are, I mean, there's nothing bad about it. Frankly speaking, Dr. Ryan, I've met a couple of people who actually said it to me that they were initially introverts, and they turned out to be amazing writers. So people who were very descriptively, illicitly giving back to society, they were very effective. So just to mention a couple of names, or maybe just I wouldn't just put them in a fix, but otherwise, even there are a lot of people who were very effective as people who left an impact on the society. And initially they said that no, we were people who were not really speaking to any, we were people who would just read books maybe at time. And they were the kind of people who would say no, no, we didn't like talking to anybody. So yeah, that way we can actually get a lot of information out of them, and it actually helps a lot. Like one of my friends, Ahmed Qureshi, he's an anchor person. He said, I've spent so much less time with people. And other than that, he said that no, I was spending so much time with books. Another very dear friend, Jessica Lahart, and I was having a session with her like a few days back, and I was even giving her example to my niece yesterday because I was spending time with her. So I said, the amazing thing is that Jessica Lahart said live on this show with me on this session, she said that till the age of my matriculation, the A levels, that is. She said that no, I was not a very friendly person. And the first time I realized that people were not laughing at me, rather with me, was when I was spending time with them. So I think that that's a very good tool.
Hello. I think the feed may be down. I think Madam Fatima may be having some issues with her internet connection. That is right. Perhaps if some of you online have questions, and if you can hear me, you could type them in, and maybe we can communicate that way. She will join. Yeah, as I mentioned, if any of you have any comments or questions, I think that the points that Madam Fatima were making. Ah,
Yeah, I'm sorry, there was a connectivity issue.
ah,
Um, Okay, I think that's fine. I'm sorry, it was a connectivity issue, Dr. Ryan. Actually, I shared it with you, I guess, that I'm here in Quetta, and the connectivity issues over here are a little taxing. I hope you continued speaking with all our people who were here joined with us.
Here I see an interesting question by Madam Saida Numera Mohsin about why listening to stories might be better than reading them.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question,
Yes.
which we're sort of testing right now because we are listening to audiobooks. And whenever we
Yeah.
travel to North America to visit my family, we have to travel quite long distances, and we listen to audiobooks in the car, including Dr. Seuss. My wife and I have listened to The Life of Pi and Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. That was a bit heavy for the children, so we did that when they were asleep. But I think, listening to them, it adds a whole nother dimension. I think particularly in Pakistan, it seems to me sometimes that people here learn much better through listening than reading sometimes. I grew up in a very much of sort of a visual oriented culture where it's all about reading. I face this problem also with the way that people like to communicate. I don't like to talk on the phone very much, but many of my Pakistani colleagues prefer to speak on the phone. I prefer email. They might hate email. That is also something that you grow up with. But I think, small children's stuff that they hear, I think, speaks to them in ways that just listening to them would not. Although, if one combines them, obviously, if one is like my sons, they can all read, but they still like to have a bedtime story for me to read with them. So I think combining those two, listening and reading, can be quite powerful.
Yeah, that's very true. For myself, I really prefer reading because it kind of leaves a better imprint, I would rather say, or maybe the words or the vocabulary. So you're learning so much out of that. And then you can also get back to the vocabulary for people who want to have an increase in their vocabulary. It's quite an easy tool that you grab a book and go through it. And the words that you think that are hard to catch on to or hard to remember, you can get back to those in a different frequency altogether. So in that way, you will be easily getting back to those words and learning them, or keep on memorizing those words. It will be more effective as a tool. And frankly speaking, there were a couple of Urdu books. I'm Dr. Ryan, I share my experience with you. There are words in Urdu text because Urdu is a very deep language. So unfortunately, there were words which I couldn't grab onto for a very long time, and I need to use, a dictionary, an Urdu dictionary, for getting back to those words because Urdu has a very deeper context. I'm not saying that English doesn't have that. Obviously, English is a completely different, it's a genre. It's a different field altogether. But for Urdu, there were a few words carrying different notions and different meaning. So for that, I wanted to have audio books. And I realized that listening to Urdu books was much more easier. But on the contrary, I wanted to read English books because I felt more comfortable with them. So if people have one national language which they're close to, they have another, say for instance, regional language which they think that, yeah, I would like to listen to that. So then the audio books come in. And if you think that you want to improve on your English, then you go for an English book for reading capacity. And if you think that, no, I think I should rather read it more quickly, so the pace is covered in a much better way, then only go for an audio book. By the way, we also have Ghulam Abbas. I think you can see him there on the page as well. Dr. Ryan, can you do that? He says how to teach small children. I think he wants to know how we can teach our small children how to go through books, or how to read more frequently, or make them readers. So small children, they're amazing creatures, so they learn very quickly as compared to elder people. Dr. Ryan, I think the question is for you.
Yeah, I think my wife would be a much better person to ask. She's a trained teacher, whereas I deal with the end product where it's too late with the university students. But yeah, obviously bedtime starting at a very young age. I mean, you were talking starting even before birth. That obviously is very early. But starting those habits very early on and giving children just scheduled times where you tell them now it's your time to read a book and just do it for half an hour. It can
Yeah.
be comic books. It could be all kinds of things. I also grew up with Asterix and Obelix. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. These Belgian French comics that were quite prevalent. I actually grew up in Germany, and so I was exposed to that. So that can also be very useful time for people to start to learn how to develop those habits of reading.
Yeah, yes, you're right. And by the way, Dr. Ryan, the end product, I think you get that end product, but it's never too late to tell them that, you can still be a reader. Just one last question. I know the time is up, and I think probably your wife is telling you, is she showing you this sign of time up?
No, saying hello.
Okay, hello. Now, by the way, Dr. Ryan, just last question. Many moderate parents are turning to technology. Let me show this over so that you can see, have a look at this. So, Farukdal is asking, by the way, he's the chairman, also a dear friend of mine. Many moderate parents are turning to technology to help give their children's language development an edge. We see many mobile apps that offer the same. Do you think that the decidedly old fashioned bedtime story should not be dumped into the digital trash bin? No.
I see a clear sort of preference in this question. Now,
You know.
obviously, it's getting a bit mixed now because now you have Kindles where the book is sort of an electronic format. So, is
Yeah.
there a huge difference between reading from a Kindle and reading from a book? I don't know. I mean, the book itself is also a new technology. It was developed, in the bound volume that we have today, and well, depending on how we look at it, or at a certain time. Before that, you had papyrus scrolls or whatever kind of scrolls they were, and before that, you had hieroglyphs. So, technology changes. I wouldn't get too stuck on it, but I think there is something nice about the parent reading and the child listening and being able to follow the words. Now, whether that is an old-fashioned book or if it's a Kindle, that's another thing. But I think the old-fashioned way, yes, I agree that that's certainly important.
Yeah, I think so too, by the way. I want you to say a few words for Read Pakistan and also for the youth and the children out there, just to give them a message of reading, if you may.
Well, this is a great organization. I've just become aware of it only recently, but you're doing a very good job. For the children, I would say the same thing that Roald Dahl tells the children in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He says this: read, read, read. Um, there's a funny sequence in that when my children listened to, we were actually listening to it in the car while we were driving. It was an audio book. It was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and they just were all laughing because he's making fun of children who are spending too much time watching TV or otherwise not reading. So I would just say, read. Even if what you have given is too difficult for you, read something simpler. If you're a student who struggles with English, as you were saying earlier, pick something
Yeah.
simple. Pick an illustrated classic. You might feel silly reading it, but listen, I came to Pakistan. I could not speak Urdu, so what did I start out with? I started out with like a baby, like a child, and so some of the first things I read were children's books because they're
Wow.
frankly speaking they're easier. जो भी है आपको पढ़ना चाहिए. So it should be just get the book in your hand, and I'll tell you, we see the consequences when in university and in at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. The first question we
Yes.
always ask is, what are your reading habits? I don't want to know, do you read Plato or Aristotle or Sigmund Freud? Okay, that's good if you do.
Yeah.
But just read anything, have reading habits. Develop a
That's
particular taste for novels, whether they're in Urdu or Punjabi poetry, whatever it is. bullish, just read. That is important.
That is so important. Thank you so very much, Dr. Ryan, and everybody out there. I think the best message to give is to read Ikra, Ikra Bismi Rabbika Allazi Khalaq. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to reading, because we don't mind you reading anything. We, like I said, and Dr. Ryan also said the same, that language is not important. What is important is that you should have the right kind of reading with you, because that is from where you're going to reach to knowledge, you're going to reach to ethics, you're going to reach to morals. So this was today with us. It was Dr. Ryan. Even though he has spent a lot of time doing a lot of publications, a lot of researches, events, and conferences, and all of those were about really tough topics like Introduction to Political Science, the government of Western Europe and North Africa, or research methodology, and all these big things that he had in mind to deal with. But at the end of the day, the best thing is because Dr. Ryan was here for a social cause. Now, at the end of the day, even though he is a doctor, even though he has so much in his plate to do, but he has, actually extracted out time to give for a social cause. And this is where the person, the human comes in. This has come from reading. Dr. Ryan, thank you so very much for your time. I am personally thankful, and definitely Read Pakistan is indebted to you. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. See you some other time. We will.